2001 A Space Odyssey Arthur C. Clarke A Space Odyssey 2001 Chapter 5 Encounter in the Dawn. As he leads the tribe down to the river in the dim light of dawn, Moonwatcher paused uncertainly at a familiar spot. Something he knew was missing, but what it was he could not remember. He wasted no moment, no mental effort on the problem. For this morning, he had more important matters on his mind. Like thunder and lightning and cloud and eclipse, the great block of crystal had departed as mysteriously as it had come. Having vanished into the non-existent past, it never troubled Moonwatcher's thought again. He would never know what it had done to him, and none of his companions wondered as they gathered around him in the morning mist why he had paused for a moment here on the way to the river. From their side to the stream, in the never violated safety to their own territory, the others first saw Moonwatcher and a dozen males of his tribe as a moving frisbee against the dawn sky. At once, they began to scream their daily challenge, but this time there was no answer. Steadily, purposefully, above all, silently, Moonwatcher had his band descend the lower hillock that overlooked the river, and as they approached, the others became suddenly quiet. Their ritual age ebbed away, to be replaced by a mounting fear. They were dimly aware that something had happened, and that this encounter was unlike all those that had ever gone before. The bone clubs and knives that Moonwatcher's group carried did not alarm them, for they did not understand their purpose. They only knew that their rivals' movements were now imbued with determination and with menace. The party stopped at the water's edge, and for a moment the others' courage revived. Led by one ear, they half-heartedly resumed their battle chant. It lasted only a few seconds before a vision of terror struck them dumb. Moonwatcher raised his arm high into the air, revealing the burden that until now had been concealed by the hirsute bodies of his companions. He was holding a stout branch, and impaled upon it was a bloody head of the leopard. The mouth had been jammed open with a stick, and the great fangs gleamed ghastly white in the first rays of the rising sun. Most of the others were too paralyzed with fright to move, but some began a slow, stumbling retreat. That was all the encouragement that Moonwatcher needed. Still holding the mangled trophy above his head, he started to cross the stream. After a moment's hesitation, his companion splashed after him, and Moonwatcher reached the far side. One ear was still standing his ground. Perhaps he was too brave or too stupid to run. Perhaps he could not really believe that this outrage was actually happening. God or hero, it made no difference in the end, as the frozen snarl of death came crashing down upon his uncomprehending head. Shrieking with fright, the others scattered into the bush, but Presently, they would return, and soon they would forget their lost leader. For a few seconds, Moonwatcher stood uncertainly above his new victim, trying to grasp the strange and wonderful fact that the dead Leofed could kill again. Not now, he was a master of the world, and he was not quite sure what to do next, but he would think of something. Chapter 6 Ascent of Man. A new animal was abroad the planet, spreading slowly out from the Africa heartland. It was still so rare that a hasty conscience might have overlooked. Among the teeming billions of creatures roving over land and sea, there was no evidence as yet that it was prosper or even survive. On this world there were so many mightier beasts had passed away. Its fate still wavered in the balance. In the 100,000 years since crystal had descended upon Africa, the man-apes had invented nothing, but they had started to challenge and had developed a skill which no other animal possessed. Their bone club had increased their reach and multiplied their strength. They were no longer defenseless against the predator with whom they had to compete. The smaller carnivorous they could drive away from their own skill. The large one they could at least discourage and sometimes put to flight. Their massive teeth were growing smaller, for they were no longer essential. The sharp-edged stone that would be used to dig out root and to cut and saw through flesh and fiber had begun to replace them with immeasurable consequences. No longer were men-apes faced with starvation when their teeth became damaged or worn. Even the crudest tool could add many years to their lives. And as their fangs diminished, the shape of their face started to alter, the snout receded, the massive jaw became more delicate, the mouth able to make more subtle sounds. Speech was still a million years away, but the first step toward it had been taken. And then the world began to change. In four great waves, it 200,000 years between their crest, the ice ages swept by, leaving their mark on all the globe. Other side of the tropics, the glaciers slew those who had permanently left their ancestral home, and everywhere they winnowed out the creature which could not adapt. When the ice had passed, so had much of the planet early life, including man-apes, but unlike so many others, they had left descendants. They had not merely become extinct, they had been transformed. The toolmakers had been remade by their own tools. For in using club and planes, their hands had developed a dexterity found wherever else in the animal kingdom, permitting them to make still better tools, which in turn had developed their limbs and brain yet further. It was an accelerating, cumulative process, and at its end was man. The first true man had tools and weapons omnia little better than thousands of their ancestors of a million years earlier, but they could use them with a far greater skill. And somewhere in the shadowy centuries that had gone before, they had invented the most essential tool of all, though it could be neither seen nor touched. They had learned to speak, and so had won their first great victory over time. Now, the knowledge of one generation could be handed on the next, so that each age could profit from those that had gone before. Unlike the animal who knew only the present, man had acquired a past, and he was beginning to group toward the future. He was also learning to harness the force of nature. With the taming of fire, he had laid the fortunate foundation of technology and left his animal origins far behind. Stone gave way to bronze and then to iron. Hunting was succeeded by agriculture. The tribe grew into the village into the town. Speech became eternal thanks to certain marks on stone and clay and papyrus. Presently, he invented philosophy and religion, and he peopled the sky, not altogether inaccurately, with gods. As his body became more and more defenseless, so his means of offense became steadily more frightful. With stone and bronze and iron and steel, he had learned the gamut of everything that could pierce and slash, and quite early in time, he had learned how to strike down his victim from a distance, the spear, the bow, the gun, and finally, the guided missile had given him weapons of infinite range and all but infinite power. Without those weapons, often though he had used them against himself, man would never have conquered his world. Into them he had put his heart and soul, and for ages they had served him well. But now, as long as they exist, he was living on borrowed time.